The silent exodus. The distant hum of quantum engines barely masked the tension inside the research vessel Horizon's Promise. Dr. Alina Volkov's fingers traced the holographic display, her piercing green eyes analyzing the impossible data stream flickering before her. Outside the reinforced viewport, the endless black of space stretched like an infinite canvas of forgotten dreams. "This can't be right," she muttered, her Russian accent cutting through the sterile silence of the laboratory. Captain Marcus Reyes approached, his weathered hands clasped behind his back. Unlike most military commanders, he moved with the precision of a scientist, each step calculated and deliberate. "What have you found, Doctor?" Alina adjusted the spectral analysis, her neural interface flickering with cascading data streams. The biological sample, recovered from an uncharted exoplanet on the fringes of explored space, contained genetic markers that defied everything humanity understood about xenobiology. "These cellular structures," she said, enlarging a microscopic view, "they're not just alien. They're impossible. Look at the quantum entanglement within the cellular membrane. It's like the organism is simultaneously existing in multiple dimensional states." Marcus leaned closer, his augmented eye, a remnant from years of deep space exploration, zooming into the intricate details. Confederation research teams would pay astronomical credits for this discovery. A bitter laugh escaped Alina's lips. The Confederation? They'd suppress this immediately. Anything that challenges their established xenobiological models gets buried faster than a dying star. The Galactic Confederation, a bureaucratic monolith that had systematically marginalized humanity for generations. To them, humans were primitive, unpredictable, a species too volatile to be trusted with significant scientific or diplomatic roles. Research vessels like the Horizon's Promise were granted minimal exploration rights, always under strict supervision, always with predetermined boundaries. Marcus's cybernetic hand, a sophisticated prosthetic that responded to neural impulses with near-organic precision, clenched slightly. "We're one transmission away from having this entire research confiscated. You know how they operate." Alina nodded, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. She began encoding the research data, not into standard transmission protocols, but into a complex quantum encryption pattern she had developed in secret. Each fragment of data would be like a ghost, impossible to track or intercept completely. "They won't silence us," she whispered, more to herself than to Marcus. "Not this time." The ship's communication array suddenly flickered. An encrypted message from Earth, marked with the highest security clearance, began to download. Marcus initiated the quantum decryption sequence, his augmented eye processing the incoming transmission at speeds no standard computer could match. His expression darkened. "Another restriction," he said, his voice flat. "The Confederation Council has reduced our exploration zone by another 37%. They're essentially pushing us into a cosmic corner." Alina's research had always been about more than scientific discovery. It was about understanding, truly understanding, the complex tapestry of life that existed beyond human comprehension. The Confederation's systematic suppression wasn't just bureaucratic. It was a deliberate attempt to maintain a hierarchy that kept humanity perpetually at the bottom. "They fear what they cannot control," Alina responded, her fingers still dancing across the holographic interface. "And right now, they cannot control the potential of human curiosity." Unknown to both of them, the biological sample they had recovered was more than just a scientific anomaly. It was a key, a molecular blueprint that would eventually unlock humanity's most extraordinary potential. Outside the viewport, a distant nebula pulsed with an energy that seemed to whisper of coming changes. Somewhere in the vast cosmic darkness, the first notes of humanity's rebellion were beginning to play, a symphony of defiance that would soon reshape the entire galactic order. Little did the Confederation know that every restriction, every marginalization, was not diminishing humanity's spirit, but tempered it. Like a blade continuously folded and reforged, human potential was being honed into something far more dangerous than any established power could imagine. The Horizon's promise continued its silent journey through the stars, carrying within its hull not just a groundbreaking scientific discovery, but the first sparks of a revolution that would echo through the cosmos. Technological crucible. The underground fabrication chamber hummed with a symphony of quantum processors and nanoassemblers. Zara Nakamura moved between holographic interfaces, her fingers leaving trails of light as she manipulated complex engineering schematics. Around her, the hidden research facility, buried beneath the permafrost of New Hokkaido's abandoned industrial zone, was humanity's most carefully guarded secret. "Breach protocol confirmed," whispered Dante Rodriguez, the facility's security specialist. His augmented eyes scanned multiple encrypted communication channels simultaneously. "Confederation surveillance drones have passed our sector. No penetration detected." Zara didn't look up from her work. The device taking shape beneath her hands was more than just a technological marvel. It was an act of defiance. A quantum resonance modulator that could theoretically bypass the most advanced Confederation communication interdiction systems. "They think they can control information," Zara muttered, her mixed Japanese-Brazilian heritage reflected in her accent, a blend of sharp consonants and fluid vowels. "But information wants to be free." The facility was a testament to human ingenuity born from oppression. Every piece of technology was a hybrid, part salvaged Confederation tech, part human innovation. Recycled quantum processors were rewired, alien communication protocols were reverse-engineered, and entire systems were rebuilt from the ground up. Dante approached his prosthetic leg, a masterpiece of adaptive biomechanical engineering, moving with liquid precision. The latest data packet from the Horizon's promise arrived. Dr. Volkov's research is unprecedented. Zara's hands paused over the quantum modulator. The biological sample discovered by Elena Volkov represented more than just a scientific curiosity. It was a blueprint, a molecular key that suggested possibilities far beyond the Confederation's understanding. "They're trying to suppress it," she said, bringing up a holographic representation of the cellular structure. "But every restriction only pushes us to innovate faster." The Confederation's control was built on a fundamental misunderstanding of human potential. Each technological barrier they erected became a challenge, each limitation a catalyst for extraordinary creativity. What they saw as a method of control, humans transformed into an opportunity for revolutionary development. A hidden network of scientists, engineers, and rebel technologists had emerged, a decentralized resistance that the Confederation's surveillance systems couldn't comprehend. Information flowed through quantum-encrypted channels. Research was shared in fragments that could only be reassembled by those who truly understood. "The new communication array is ready for initial testing," Dante announced, connecting a series of quantum entanglement nodes that looked more like intricate pieces of abstract art than communication equipment. Zara's eyes gleamed with a mixture of scientific excitement and revolutionary passion. "Let's see what they don't want us to know." The test began. Quantum pulses danced across frequencies that shouldn't exist, penetrating communication barriers that the Confederation considered impenetrable. Fragments of data began to coalesce. Reports from deep space research stations, suppressed scientific journals, intercepted military communications. A pattern emerged. The Confederation wasn't just controlling information, they were hiding something fundamental about the nature of galactic existence. "Look at this," Zara said, her voice a mixture of excitement and disbelief. A series of astronomical readings showed strange quantum fluctuations in regions of space that the Confederation had declared permanently off-limits. "These aren't natural phenomena, they're deliberate." Dante's augmented vision zoomed into the data. Artificial quantum standing waves, but the energy signature doesn't match any known technological civilization. The implications were staggering. Whatever was generating these signals was beyond current scientific understanding, something the Confederation knew about but was deliberately keeping hidden. "They're afraid," Zara whispered, "not of us, of something else." As if in response, The quantum modulator suddenly pulsed. A brief, almost imperceptible burst of energy that shouldn't have been possible. For a fraction of a second, the holographic displays flickered with an impossible complexity, revealing glimpses of data that seemed to exist between known dimensions. Dante's hand instinctively moved to a defensive system, but Zara stopped him. "No," she said, "we're not fighting, we're discovering." The resistance wasn't just about technological rebellion. It was about understanding, about pushing beyond the boundaries that had been artificially imposed. Each breakthrough was a step toward a fundamental transformation of human potential. Outside the facility, New Hokkaido's perpetual winter continued. But inside this hidden crucible of innovation, something extraordinary was taking shape. A technological revolution that would soon reshape the entire galactic understanding of what was possible. The Confederation believed they could control humanity's growth. They were about to learn how catastrophically wrong they were. The Phantom Uprising. The quantum stealth vessel Phantom's whisper hung in the void between star systems, its adaptive camouflage rendering it nearly invisible against the cosmic background. Lieutenant Kai Rodriguez sat in the command chair, his neural interface pulsing with a web of tactical information that would have overwhelmed any standard human consciousness. "Confederation patrol grid approaching," whispered Arya Akoi, the ship's quantum navigation specialist. Her fingers danced across holographic displays, weaving the ship through impossible trajectories. "Detection probability, 0.3% and falling." Kai allowed himself the briefest moment of a smile. The Confederation had spent centuries believing they understood the principles of space combat. They were about to learn how fundamentally wrong they were. The mission was more than a military operation. It was a statement, a declaration that humanity would no longer accept its prescribed role as a marginalized species. Their target, a critical Confederation communication relay station positioned at the edge of the Serpent's void. On the surface, it appeared to be a standard deep space communication hub. But the intelligence gathered by Dr. Alina Volkov's earlier research suggested something far more significant. "Quantum encryption sequence initiated," Arya announced. The ship's systems began to resonate at frequencies that would render most tracking systems blind. Kai's augmented combat implants processed potential scenarios faster than any organic brain could comprehend. Years of systematic oppression had forced humanity to develop warfare into an art form of adaptive strategy and psychological manipulation. "Remember," Kai's voice was calm, almost conversational, "this isn't about destruction. This is about sending a message." The Phantom's whisper began its approach. Traditional military doctrine would involve a direct assault, overwhelming force, destruction of target systems. But humanity had learned that true power resided in precision, in the ability to penetrate without being detected. As they neared the relay station, Arya activated a series of quantum disruption protocols. The station's defensive systems didn't just fail. They became confused. Their own programming turned against them in a ballet of technological subversion. "Communication grid compromised," Arya reported. "We're ghost-walking through their systems." What happened next was less an attack and more a surgical intervention. Critical data streams were intercepted. Key communication pathways were subtly altered. The Confederation wouldn't just lose a communication relay, they would begin to doubt the very integrity of their information networks. Kai watched as holographic displays showed the cascading effects of their intervention. Communication protocols began to fragment, secure channels became unreliable, and a sense of systemic uncertainty began to spread. "Psychological warfare," he murmured, "our most potent weapon." The Confederation had spent generations believing they could control humanity by limiting information, by creating artificial boundaries. They didn't understand that each restriction was a lesson in adaptation, each suppression a catalyst for innovation. As they completed their mission, Kai reflected on the journey that had brought humanity to this moment. It wasn't just about technological development or military strategy. It was about a fundamental reimagining of potential. "Extraction sequence initiated," Arya announced. But something was different. A quantum anomaly flickered at the edge of their sensors, something that didn't match any known technological signature. For a brief moment, Kai could have sworn he saw a pattern in the cosmic background radiation, a signal that seemed to pulse with an almost sentient rhythm. "Did you see that?" he asked. Arya's response was calm. "Seeing is believing, Lieutenant, and right now I'm not sure what I believe." The Phantom's whisper began its retreat, leaving behind a communication relay station that was physically intact but fundamentally transformed. The Confederation would soon realize that they were no longer dealing with a species that could be controlled, but one that was learning to become something entirely new. In the vast darkness of space, a message had been sent, and it was only the beginning, fracturing the Confederation. The diplomatic reception hall of the Proxima Centauri neutral zone was a masterpiece of architectural tension. Crystal chandeliers suspended from impossibly high ceilings reflected light through layers of holographic privacy fields, each creating microzones of controlled communication. Annika Patel moved through the crowd like a quantum algorithm, precise, unpredictable, always 3 steps ahead. Her emerald diplomacy suit, embedded with adaptive nanocommunication technology, was more than a fashion statement. It was a weapon. "Ambassador Krelax," she said, approaching a towering crystalline being from the Viridian Concordance. "Fascinating developments in your tertiary trade sectors." The Viridian's prismatic surface shifted, a complex language of color and refraction that spoke volumes before a single word was uttered. Most diplomats would have missed the subtle vibration that suggested both interest and caution. Annika wasn't most diplomats. The Confederation's greatest mistake had been believing that humanity could be contained. Each restriction, each marginalization, had forced human diplomats to become something entirely new, masters of information warfare, of psychological manipulation so subtle it bordered on quantum psychology. Her neural implant, a marvel of human technological adaptation, processed multiple communication layers simultaneously. She wasn't just hearing conversations, she was mapping entire political ecosystems. "The recent trade disruptions in the Orion Arm," she continued, her voice a carefully modulated instrument, "seemed to suggest interesting fracture points in the current galactic economic structure." Ambassador Krelax's crystalline form rippled, a diplomatic equivalent of raising an eyebrow. The Viridian Concordance had long been a reluctant member of the Confederation, their economic interests perpetually at odds with the centralized control mechanisms. Annika knew exactly which threads to pull. Across the room, other delegations moved like pieces on a multidimensional chessboard. The Jan Collective's representatives spoke in hushed tones, their bioluminescent communication patterns betraying deep internal conflicts. The Mercurian technocracy's envoys clustered near the quantum-shielded communication nodes, their augmented sensory arrays probing for information. But Annika was playing a different game entirely. Her research, built upon the groundwork laid by scientists like Elena Volkov, had uncovered something far more profound than simple diplomatic maneuvering. The Confederation wasn't just a political entity. It was a carefully constructed system designed to suppress certain types of galactic knowledge. "The recent quantum communication anomalies," she said to Krelax, "have you noticed their peculiar resonance patterns?" The ambassador's crystalline form shifted, surprise carefully masked. Humanity's diplomatic corps had transformed. No longer were they the marginalized species begging for recognition. They were architects of systemic disruption, capable of seeing the invisible connections that bound galactic politics together. A holographic display flickered momentarily, a quantum communication pulse that most would have missed. But Annika caught it. A message, encoded in the very fabric of the reception's communication infrastructure. From Zara Nakamura's Technological Resistance. The message was elegant in its simplicity. A series of quantum resonance patterns that revealed fault lines in the Confederation's communication networks. Not just technical vulnerabilities, but political ones, hidden tensions, suppressed conflicts, economic contradictions. Annika's smile was microscopic. Most would have seen nothing. The Confederation believed they controlled information. They didn't understand that information was alive, a living system that could be guided, nudged, transformed. "Interesting times," she murmured to Krelax, who responded with a complex prismatic shift that translated roughly to "indeed." By the end of the evening, 3 minor trade agreements would be subtly altered. 2 diplomatic missions would be quietly redirected, and the foundations of the Confederation's unified control would develop almost invisible cracks. Not through violence, not through direct confrontation, but through the most human of capabilities, the ability to see connections others missed. Outside the reception hall, the stars continued their ancient dance. But something was changing. The galaxy was about to remember that humanity was not a species to be controlled, but a force of nature waiting to be understood. Beyond the known, the horizon's edge, humanity's most advanced command vessel, hung in space like a silent predator, its quantum-adaptive hull absorbing and refracting light in ways that defied traditional understanding. Admiral Nikolai Volkov stood at the central command, his presence a fusion of military precision and scientific contemplation. Surrounding him, the bridge crew moved with a synchronicity that blurred the line between human and machine. Neural networks interconnected, tactical systems anticipated movements before they occurred, and the very air seemed charged with a potential that transcended traditional warfare. "Final convergence point approaching," announced Commander Elena Rodriguez, no relation to the earlier Rodriguez mentioned in previous encounters, but another testament to humanity's interconnected resistance. The Confederation's last stronghold, a massive spherical structure known as the Nexus Prime, loomed before them. It wasn't just a military installation. It was the symbolic heart of a system that had sought to control, to limit, to suppress. Nikolai's mind drifted to his sister Elena's final research, the quantum biological sample that had started everything. What they had discovered was far more profound than a simple act of rebellion. They were evolving. "Quantum resonance protocols activated," Elena reported. The ship's systems began to pulse with a complexity that would have been incomprehensible mere decades ago. The attack was nothing like traditional warfare. As Confederation defense systems activated, they found themselves fighting an enemy that existed simultaneously in multiple dimensional states. Weapons systems would target a specific coordinate, only to find the human vessels had already shifted, not moved, but fundamentally altered their quantum positioning. It was a dance of information, of potential, of possibilities. "They still don't understand," Nikolai murmured. The Confederation had always seen conflict as a linear progression: attack, defend, conquer. Humanity had transformed warfare into something more, a fluid, adaptive system that was alive, intelligent, transformative. Aboard the Nexus Prime, Confederation leadership watched in growing horror. Their most advanced tracking systems, their most sophisticated defense networks, were being dismantled not through brute force, but through a kind of systemic reconfiguration. Human vessels didn't just attack. They infiltrated, they understood, they transformed. A quantum communication pulse erupted, not a weapon but a message. Complex data streams that carried more than information. They carried potential, alternative evolutionary pathways, glimpses of connections that transcended traditional understanding of space, time, existence. "We are not conquering," Nikolai's voice carried across all communication bands. "We are awakening." The Nexus Prime began to change, not destroyed, transformed, its own systems being rewritten, reconfigured, given new purpose. The Confederation's most secure installation became a testament to human potential, a living system of unprecedented complexity. And then something unexpected happened. A signal emerged from beyond known space, not from the Confederation, not human, something else. The quantum anomalies that Zara Nakamura had first detected, the strange signals intercepted by Kai Rodriguez, the hidden patterns Annika Patel had glimpsed in diplomatic communications. They were connected. Incoming transmission, Alina announced, her voice a mixture of scientific excitement and existential wonder. The signal was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. It wasn't a message in any traditional sense. It was a complex quantum frequency that carried consciousness, information, potential. Nikolai understood in that moment that their rebellion, their struggle, was never just about the Confederation. It was about something far more profound. Humanity wasn't just challenging a galactic political system. They were being prepared, tested, evolved. "We're not alone," he whispered, "and we're not done." The horizon's edge pulsed, the Nexus Prime transformed, and somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, something ancient and watching took notice. The first chapter was ending, but the true story was just beginning.